Cybersecurity in the Digital Era. I would like to invite on the dais our moderator for the session, Mr. Stephen George, Vice President of Technology at HSBC. Mr. Stephen George, a seasoned IT leader with 22 plus years of experience, excels in service engineering, program management, design thinking, transformation, and cybersecurity. Currently overseeing a strategic automation platform, he leverages PMP, AWS, ITIL, and Six Sigma expertise to drive innovation, efficiency, and quality, demonstrating a passion for continuous learning and development. I would also like to invite our fellow panelists on the stage. Mr. Saradindu Sarkar, Vice President of Technology Risk Management, Mastercard. Mr. Manoj Gujaran, Chief Compliance Officer, Poonawalla, Fincorp. Mr. Basil Dange, CISO, Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. Mr. Bhaskar Rao, CISO at the Bharat Co-operative Bank, Mumbai Limited. And Mr. Abhijit De, Vice President and Product Head of API Banking at Axis Bank.
Hi, good evening all. So thank you Gain Skills and for organizing and giving us this facility to have this panel discussion on cybersecurity. We have eminent set of speakers in the BFSI sector who are going to help us understand and unveil some of the new things that are coming up our way. With the rapid evolution of technology, the threat landscape is also changing every day. Okay, day before yesterday, I read an article: 26 billion records were leaked from various platforms. So it's changing. Even after being so vigilant, after so many of presentations and customer education, employee education, still we are going through the phase where people are getting phished and our technology systems are getting hacked. Okay. So with that, I would like to start with this discussion, and our eminent speakers will give us some hindsight on how things are progressing. So over to Basil. How are advancements in technology reshaping the threat landscape of BFSI organization, and what new cybersecurity challenges are emerging in the digital era?
Yeah, good afternoon all. Thanks, Stephen. So, see, actually, the new digital era, it has increased the attack surface because the organization has to look in the various directions. It's not like initially we used to have only the data center where the responsibility was protecting our asset, which was there within the organizations. But looking at the current digital landscape, we are talking to business like they have their own set of application which is getting deployed. We also have a shadow IT. Being from the part of fintech, we have a huge dependency on the third-party partners. Looking at the cloud, looking at the on-prem setup, as well as there is a new attack which is originating from the IoT areas as well. So like, as you rightly mentioned, 4.6 billion records were stolen. We keep on hearing that this data breach or the one data breach or the other. So this is like we are seeing that business is trying to do, because just before our panel there was one panel which was discussing on the analytic front. So business want to have all data on this single server, so they will be able to do the analytics in a much better way. But this also poses the risk, like in case if that database get compromised, all the customers or the user information getting compromised, there is the higher chances of that. So attacker only have to consider on one database, and if that get breached, it's like a win situation for him. Similarly, we have seen the kind of cyber attack for last year. If you see the kind of 0 day which we got was somewhere around 69, but we are sitting in January 2024. There are already 4 0-day attack, 0-day exploit which was released. I guess one from Avanti, one from Apple, Chrome, just last week, and there was a Citrix ADC also. So the kind of exploitations which is happening is also increased. we all are part for security. We know that, okay, this exploit, what has been getting disclosed, might not happen that it is released on the same day. It might, the white hat attacker, hackers, or the bug bounty team might have already identified those kind of vulnerabilities in the past. So we are always in the receiving end, so that every time we have to protect the organization in much better way, so that we can protect organization as well as on the customer side.
Thanks, Basil. Over to Manoj. So, Manoj, what collaborative efforts exist between the BFSI organization, the regulatory bodies, and law enforcement agencies to strengthen the collective response against the security threat?
Thank you. So I'm actually the odd man out here from compliance and all in between all the technology veterans. So as far as the coordination, between the law enforcement agency, regulatory bodies and BFSI is concerned, it plays a very pivotal role, because there are a lot of reportings that is required to be done by NBFCs, with respect to frauds or suspicious transactions that keep happening, and on the money laundering part basically. So FIU, RBI, they have ample data. So I think blacklisting and having a verified data available as a repository in the financial system, which can be checked or verified by any financial institution, is a very key thing. And of course, engaging with the regulators, sharing data with them. So there is also a regulatory requirement of reporting any security incident on CERTI and then RBI as per regulatory requirements. So I think this all helps a lot, for all the financial institution to check such informations, see how the cyber attacks have happened, and take, proactive actions against such events basically.
Thanks. So coming to Abhijit. Yeah. So Abhijit, what role do artificial intelligence and machine learning play in enhancing the cyber security measures?
Yeah, thanks Stephen for the question, and thanks again for having me here. See, if you talk about the AI, right, or ML, right, in banking or in this particular sector, right, AI is not a new thing, right. For the last couple of years, there are lots of innovations being going around AI and ML. But on the cyber security per se, and first of all, I'm more from a product side, so I'm more on a consumer part, right? I'm not on the implementer or the gatekeeper end. But what I have seen lately in last 2 years, right? AI is being used more in that identifying the potential threats, right? For example, let's talk about that Open API. Probably that's one of my favorite topics, right? So in Open API, the moment we have a gateway, on that gateway, I have the throttle management, I have the all the probable measures to stop any DDoS attack and all, right? These all are the bookish thing, but I don't know if any of the possible threats are coming from any of my API consumer, right? Probably I have already cited that example in my one-on-one session, that let's say one of my user who are having couple of my payment and balance inquiry APIs, and out of those APIs, one API I have seen that the number of hits I'm getting for that particular API for that particular consumer channel, it's more than a normal one, right? Apparently, it's not a red flag, right? Not even a yellow flag, because he is within the TPS limit and all. But there should be a method, maybe AI or maybe some kind of ML, that will identify that this particular nature, all of a sudden the surge, right? This is not a very common nature. I mean, there should be something at that consumer end, right? There must be something has gone rogue at their end, right? So now these are the use cases where AI or ML can help the cybersecurity. Also that, I mean, before this session I was talking to Saradindu, and we are talking about that, how zombie APIs are reacting that, and how we can identify zombie API using multiple AI methods. And so these all are the measures, right? But on top of all this, there need to be a governance. So in AI, the most problem is that if one of your API has gone rogue, or if one of your API is not working in the way it should, you know how to stop it. But in case of AI, the control sometimes is not in your hand, right? So that one threat will always be there. And there we need to think about that how we can have more control on that AI, right? So controlled AI for cybersecurity should be the best use case when you are implementing something on AI part.
Thanks, Abhijit. So my next question is to Bhaskar. With the advent of remote and hybrid working, how are financial institutions adapting to the security threats that are arising through these channels when the employees or the people are working from remote areas?
See, as of now, we are reduced remote working because of our security reason and many other things. See, actually, we are, being a bank, we have to be extra careful on that. And we are working on a Zero Trust network altogether. And bank is actually working on a Zero Trust, and we have deployed so many things which is required for the bank. Start from the firewall to the micro-segmentation, almost everything. As far as the staff is concerned, we are actually working with the VPN access, and the only need-based access we have to give to customers. That's what we are doing. Whitelisting of URLs we are giving. And even in the remote access, what we are giving to PAM, we are giving only access to those servers which is required for them to work, not anything and everything. Only need-based access we are giving. So being a bank, we have multiple layers in that. You talk about remote access is actually reduced nowadays. We are not giving much to that. But we used to work from office only right now. But being a bank, we have taken extra care of the data security. On the entire network security we are taking, and we have been doing all the micro-segmentation kind of thing, which is the ring fencing of each and every server which we are doing right now. Then apart from that, we are giving a training to the customer. The phishing exercise we are conducting, training we are giving, so many other things we are doing it. As far as the staff is concerned, we give physical training also to them. We create an awareness with them. All those things we are working on it. Because being a bank, we don't take risk actually. So that is the reason.
Fine, thanks. My next question is for Sharad. So, Sharad, in the wake of regulatory changes, how are cybersecurity frameworks evolving in the BFSI sector, and what steps can organizations take to ensure compliance with industry standards?
Thanks, Stephen. Good question, and I'm sure everybody in this room, if I were to ask how many of your folks feel audit fatigue, I'm sure it would be 90% of the population who would raise your hands. So again, this is my personal opinion backed by certain set of research and experience, and I have lived both sides of the world, industry as well as consulting. Let's first understand why these regulations are emerging. The central banks are not net new. They have been there in existence for years now. I think technology today is all pervasive, be it IoT, wearable, whatever we want to say. And with more and more adaptation of digital technology, the threat landscape has changed multifold. And when I say the threat landscape, it's the external threat landscape. And there has been a growing need or obligation on central banks to increase their scrutiny to ensure organization can uphold the cyber resilience. So if you happen to open up any regulation, be it the RBI or MAS or the National Bank of Belgium or US, whatever you open up, one common theme that comes up is your organization cyber resilient? Now what does it mean? In the wake of an incident, are you able to identify, respond, and recover quickly without having a disruptive impact to your business? So what does it tie back to? It ties back to, and this is something to watch out, while today's regulation does not enforce it very strongly, they only capture some of the controls on the application security side of it, but this is something that you should not be surprised if tomorrow it comes in as a binding obligation. And I think in the last session somebody talked about privacy by design. Security by design and privacy by design is something that you can watch out for, which will be a part of the regulation, which means what's your go, no-go to the market? Who takes that call? Who is accountable for all those set of risk, right? So that will be one of those game changers where they will not restrict only to your application security. They want to understand your entire process of launching a product in the market. They will also ask you for a detailed risk assessment that you have undertaken. They would also want to see what set of controls have you deployed, what was the level of satisfaction before somebody signed off to say that the product can be launched. Now, moving into a different tangent, let's say, how do we reduce audit fatigue, right? And again, I'm not trying to say every organization would do this, but being on the other side of the world in a consulting, one of the common observation was a new circular gets published or a new regulation gets published. It's a business for a consulting. Why? You get phone calls. Are you aware of this new stuff? Can you send in your people and help us in our compliance journey? Now help me understand, these consultants are also reading that regulation for the first time as you and I, right? And they cannot come overnight, understand your environment and give you a compliance cheat sheet. So fundamentally, if you happen to open up any regulation and go through it, you will see 90% of the requirements are homogeneous in nature. And when I say homogeneous in nature, they tie back to the baseline security principles, be it asset management, change management, incident management, problem management, SDLC, application security, vulnerability management, name it. It is all one and common across the board. So how can we be ahead of the race? Not sure, most of us might be privy of it, something called a unified control framework or a common control framework. The first step is take a foundational management system of security, put down your set of controls, then try and look at your current control maturity and come out with those risks that is being identified. So that gives you a very good demonstration of what's your current security posture. Now let's say there is a regulation A versus regulation B that comes in. I think in my opinion, the first step is to do an impact assessment. Engage your second line to look at your common control, look at what the regulation says. If your foundation has been built correctly, most of the places you would be comfortable to meet that requirement. There will be areas which would be significantly called out. Like somebody says, I need a SNMP version 2, and today you are a SNMP version 1. Or I need a TLS 2.20, and you are a TLS 1.0, right? Those are areas that should be tabled to the executive committee to say that, hey, there is a new regulation. We did our initial assessment. These are some of those pertinent, unique requirements that has emerged. That may call in for some decisions, investment, time and energy to it, right? And then do your own due diligence. Now the question is, how do we reduce audit fatigue? One classical way of doing it is being an audit-ready organization. So if your foundation is in order, at least concepts on test of design and test of operating effectiveness. So let me pick up an example. Let's say change management. So do you have a policy? Do you have a process? Is your policy and process aligned to most of the internationally acclaimed standard? If the answer is yes, you don't have to reinvent and go back multiple times to your control operator and ask for it. What you have to look at is the effectiveness part of it. Even on that, you can leverage on it. Let's say 3 months back, you picked up that control operator and asked for a certain set of evidences, and those evidences can be showcased to a new auditor who has just walked in your door, right? Because it's point in time. It's just 2 months old. You can check with your auditor if that suffices the need. If not, you only bug them to give the most recent and latest evidence. So that's point number 2. So this is how you can leverage your common control framework, build in a cultural shift, because this will not happen overnight. If they are not in a habit of doing their own set of governance, this is not going to change. So there has to be a conscious effort around that space. Last but not the least is, don't go and buy glorified technology just because your competition is buying it. And I think in the morning, Dr. Rajput emphasized on it, right? You may have a glorified technology, but if you do a due diligence, you're only using not even 25% to its full potential. Reason? You have a skill gap within your team. Are you investing adequately to bring them up to speed? If the answer is no, then I think that tool does not make any sense in that environment. So overall, I would say that the changing paradigm is more stringent regulations with more governance and scrutiny. I think somebody talked about reporting to CERT, the incidents, right? Now it's an obligation to report incidents to CERT. Back in those days, there was no such obligation. Now you can emphasize on how stringent it has been. Now RBI comes in any bank or any payment networks and they would audit. You don't even get that lead time that you will prepare for it. Now, how do you front end those audits? The only way out is you embed audit as a part of your daily DNA. That is the only game changer that you can. And I think I have a question at the later part of which is, how do you do it? There are automation methods to also enable that. Thank you.
So I would like to just add to what you just said. So if you see for NBFCs, there is a new master direction that has just come, which is effective 1st April, which is IT governance, risk control and assurance aspects basically. So, but there they have asked to constitute an information security committee, and VAPT assessments need to be carried out on regular basis. BCP-DR process the adequacy of BCP-DR needs to be assessed and reviewed on a periodic basis. Then BCP-DR, as I said, yeah, correct. And then if you are using a third party, a service provider or a vendor, you need to take a confirmation, written confirmation from that vendor that his application or tool is error free. Basically, there is no vulnerability, there is no malware. And if there are any upgrades also at each stage, you need to take these written confirmations. So, these are additional, regulatory requirements that are, being applied to financial institutions of late and very stringently monitored.
I'll just add to what. See, being a banker, the regulator, RBI, is having so many regulations. Of different layers ultimately. For private bank it is different, but being one of the large cooperative bank, we are almost equal to the private level. And RBI has given so many guidelines for everything. There is a guideline for everything, whatever you do it. Even for the mobile banking, if you are launching a mobile banking, all kind of thing you have to do, VAPT of a server, VAPT of application, the application security you have to do, source code audit you have to do. You have to take from confirmation from the vendor also that there is no malicious code in that. And on the top of that, even our regulator says that ultimately the responsibility is yours. Whoever does something, even after doing that, the bank is ultimately responsible for everything it is. So many layers are there. Not only that, many things have been recently come out. The governance, the IT governance, the circular had come out. Then the IT outsourcing had come out. I think we need more than our department altogether to do the compliances.
Thanks, Bhaskar. So, in continuation with that, in the context of cybersecurity, so Basil or Manoj, whoever wants to take it, being a part of NBFCs. So, what strategies are the BFSI institutions employing to stay ahead of cyber threats and protect sensitive customer data in an increasingly interconnected world?
Yeah, nothing new I will say because all the panelists has already covered the area. Bhaskar has covered something on zero trust. So this is one of the new framework which everyone is trying to adapt and try to protect whatever the things which is getting implemented within the organization. So it's on the zero trust framework, deny, and then whatever is required, it has to be allowed. The most important thing which I think is like we talk about data, because as business are doing the consolidation. Similarly, on the security aspects as well, we are trying to stretch out the solutions which is available within the organization so that we can get a holistic view. I'll just give you example of a zero trust for data. What I think, we have a DLP system for that matter. Okay, now DLP system, we know it works on the either it's fingerprinting or it's on the keywords or it's on the SLD method. Okay, now if we have a classification solution implemented, there is a DRM solution implemented, there is a CASB implemented. If this all solutions work in a standalone method, it will be not that kind of effective. So like in case if the file is getting generated and if you apply the classification at the same time, if you write a DLP policies that in case if confidential file is going outside the network, you apply the DRM policies. So that can create a whole data cycle during the data life cycle. So that the approach, one of the approach which organizations are or the institutions are taking on that. The third important thing is the user awareness, because we know that no attack can be success unless there is something which is done by human, either by clicking something or downloading. So user awareness training is one of the key area which I think, so users should be aware, okay, what is the implications, because there will be a huge impact, there will be a financial impact to the organizations, there will be intellectual IP address loss because of this cyber crisis, because someone mentioned on the cyber resilience. So we have to have a CCMP in place, so that's also incur the additional cost to the organization. So we have to see what is the impact, and the training what has been getting performed is based on the user requirements, not like a common training which is getting applicable across the organization. So it's like based on the department need or the kind of work they are doing within the organization. So customized kind of trainings are done for them.
Thanks. Yeah, you're right. So one thing, like we were talking about the customer data. Now there is one of the key, common trends that we see when someone is applying for a loan online, and he gets calls from multiple sources that you need a loan. So how that data got leaked when it's on an open, when it's in a closed platform, when we talk about cyber security of a customer data. So that is something we have to ponder upon and see how we approach and how people educate people to.
So the simple way is, do not, whenever you enter any place, say mall or any apartment to meet your friend, don't mention your name and number there. You can write any number because it doesn't matter. That is the first leakage source basically of, do not mention your mobile number anywhere very openly. And on social network also basically that's the most vulnerable area or platform where your number is, everything is easily available. So don't do that. So that's the first thing that everyone should take care of.
Thanks.
Stephen, I just want to add one thing here. Manoj, not only we shouldn't share our number, when we shouldn't quote any other number, any random number also, right? But on a very serious note, one thing about data privacy and all this DPDP guideline which has been recently introduced, right? That will have a huge impact, right? Now all the large organization, forget about a bank, right? Even any FMCG or any other industry, they all are working on a data privacy framework. And this hold good for the internal architecture. So internally, let's say we have around 500 or 600 applications. Now the access of the data are restricted on the basis of the applications also. It's not only we are bordering our data access outside organization, even internally also, right? And the consent, the framework and all are there. So that one part I think will have a huge impact in next 1 or 2 years, because the penalty which they are quoted, right, in that data privacy framework or the DPDP guidelines, that's huge. And we can't afford to do that. So that data privacy thing will be a huge impact.
Thanks, Abhijit.
Just few points to add to what he just mentioned is, so encryption is done when the data is transmitted, but it's ignored where it rests actually. So it should also be encrypted where it is resting. That's the most important area. That is one. Second, basically whenever the data is stored in the third-party vendors ecosystem, the cyber security measures that the host organization or the client has ensured inside its system should also be ensured that it is implemented at the client side. The oversight, audit, reviews needs to be carried out on a very regular basis because it is ultimately customer data and the institution is responsible and not the vendor. So that's need to be taken care actually.
Yeah, thanks. So over to Sharad. So Sharad, what role does continuous monitoring and assessment play in cybersecurity resilience? Okay, and how can BFSI organization implement proactive measures to stay ahead of evolving cyber crimes?
Yeah, this is really good question. And see, as we were saying, that we need to be an audit-ready organization. So easier said than done, right? Because your operator's day job is not compliance, right? They have a different day job to do. So how do you enable them? And again, I think we talked about master direction. One of the requirements of master direction, and I'm just putting RBI in light, while we have similar requirements across the globe, is to say that how are your security key performance indicators being reported? How is your CISO, designated CISO approved by the board, taking a stock of those risk and key performance indicators? Now, how do you get it? Those indicators will not come out of the blue. It will come out of data, right? How do you know what is reported by your function is adequately correct? So, first step first, and I think Abhijit touched about open banking. He talked about how API is now bundled as a product versus a connectivity at an endpoint. I think while AI, APIs, all of these are enabling business, there is equal opportunity to leverage it at your compliance posture as well. So the first step first is identify the source of truth where the data resides. Is the data correct or not? Most of the time we get into a state of data denial. That is where we have to shift differently. First, identify whether the data is correct. And I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say I want to understand how many assets within my environment has not been patched for the last 6 months. So what's my first primary data set? Obviously an asset inventory. So I should have a CI name, I should have a host name, I should have IP addresses banded to it. So my first step is to identify, while my asset management guy claims that we have no nuances in that area, is it adequately captured or not? And I can guarantee you, if you dive into that data, you will find anomalies. So the first step is correct that data first before you integrate it to a SCCM to find out which patching has been done or not. And why did I talk about IP addresses? The fallacy with patch management is it will show you the last patch, which there are other patches also which prior to that which may not be visible. So I can sync up an IP address to a vulnerability database where the vulnerability team has reported certain snags and sync up whether a patching has been done for that specific vulnerability, right? So it talks to multiple layers to give you a inference. Now, continuous monitoring from an auditor perspective is a control in itself. So as soon as you say that I have an automation, you will be audited on that automation to see, is your automation also meeting some of those criteria, right? The second step is, I think, look at it from a value proposition. We cannot continue to be a policeman running with a stick, right? You have to appreciate the challenges of business. So be a partner, go and understand what data source they use, what are the current set of challenges that they face. With your security hat on, also bring in some expertise from your data analytics team and try and see what best we can do to come to a conclusion, come to a place where we can automate certain stuff. So it is not one man's job. It has to be a collective responsibility across the organization. So in my past experience, I have helped certain organizations automate, but with a caveat that 100% automation is not possible. You will only be able to reasonably automate those areas which has data sources, and those data sources are credible in nature, right? One thing that I missed up on the cybersecurity side of it is, what can we expect in terms of the threat landscape changing? And again, this are predictive. There is no concrete stuff to it. With the geopolitical tensions increasing multifold, the hacktivism will also increase multifold. And we know who are our big four players in the country, right? So that is something to watch out for, which essentially means at your architecture level, how do you safeguard a successful recon to happen from an external party? You can always do a recon internally. There is no harm about it. But you will have to stop a recon from an external party. when a successful recon happens, that leads to a successful hacking, right? So if you have airtight systems that you have created, if you put in the philosophy of defense of death, or let's say, for example, layered security, it would be hard to crack. And the reason why I say so is, at least for my organization, right? We are a part of critical national infrastructure in most of the countries. So we cannot go back and say that, oh, this was a miss. So our uptime is almost 99.9% because if that network is down, it will lead to a lot of havoc for that central bank or that region, right? Thank you.
Yeah, just to add, you mentioned something on the continuous monitoring. So like we, as security folks, we also should see, okay, what is the actual attack? Like normally we do a VA scan or VAPT for that matter, but actually we have to see what is the kind of vulnerability which can be exploited. So as part of continuously monitoring, because we know VAPT is not regular activity which we do, most of the organizations try to do quarterly, half yearly or yearly basis. So as part of a continuously monitoring, the VAPT should also have, because there are a lot of partners or the players have come into the existing now who are doing the continuously monitoring of the asset and also providing the inputs that if that vulnerability can be exploited. And one of the key area which I think is like most of the organizations are missing is the IoT. Because if you try to scan your environment, you will see a lot of IoT devices which are getting connected. And you will surprise to see even if you scan your data center where you have a critical resources, you will be having IoT devices which is connected to the network. And when you will see the vulnerability which is available on that IoT device, you will go crazy. So that is one of the area which I think should be taken into consideration whenever you are designing for cybersecurity space.
Okay, thanks Basil. So
I'll just add it to what he said. Because see, regarding cybersecurity framework is concerned, we have a multiple layers, as Mr. Saraj said. There are multiple layers. Start from the beginning. We have a NAC solution, we have a DLP solution, we have a micro-segmentation. Like so many layers are there. But after putting all those layers, the kind of event it generates, it's a very huge actually. And monitoring those events is very difficult for the human being because the multiple kind of thing you talk about SIM, you talk about at the DLP level, in the patch management level. So ultimately at the end of the day, we have to depend on the machine. We have to depend on the automation because everything is not possible for the human being to monitor everything. So some kind of AI is required in this process so that only critical events can be monitored by the human being and all other things can be monitored by the AI. That is one area particularly I wanted to highlight because this is major area. We put so many things behind the firewall, behind the SIM, behind the data center, everything we put it at the gateway level. But who will monitor? The entire event is incidences, events, all those things monitoring is a very big task. It's a huge task. So ultimately, there is an automation required for that so that we can actually reduce the kind of human dependency.
And in fact, there are a lot of automation into SIEM space and all of those stuff, leveraging AI. So that's how organizations are trying to define those criterias and ensure that they get abreast and they are more proactive in doing the event management. Again, AI needs governance, right? And that brings me to an important facet that Europe is the only region who has come up with a regulation of ethical AI, right? While the rest of the countries are still framing their guidelines, right? So don't be surprised that in addition to whatever regulation we are adhering to, we have another to cater to in the subsequent time.
Thanks, Sharad. Over to Avijit. How can BFSI organizations enhance customer trust by transparently communicating their cybersecurity measures and incident response capabilities in this digital era?
Okay. So far what we are discussing is more on that governance framework and all, right? Even for cybersecurity, there are impact on CX, on the customer experience, right? For example, if my framework requires that my customer has to reset the PIN for any of my app or any of my digital premise in every 3 months, there should be enough communication, there should be enough nudge, enough knowledge to be shared with the customer, that it is an ask for your own security. It's not like that we are adding up anything. Right? So this type of formal or informal way, in a narrative way, in a more animated way, so that customer can glue to that idea. Right? For example, I'll not take the name of the bank, but I have seen one of the bank, they have launched one of a virtual character to educate their customers for the cybersecurity reasons and all, right? It's a global bank, one of our international peer, right? So these type of thing will educate our customer. And if you see these OTP frauds and all, in most of the time customers do it out of their lack of knowledge, right? Now this particular piece probably we can't manage until unless customer is educated enough not to fall into that trap, right? So now from the cybersecurity person, even, since I'm more from a product end, where fortunately or unfortunately I'm dealing with a product which has a huge relation, probably bitter or probably sweeter, with cybersecurity, right? Whenever I go and meet up my cybersecurity friends and talk about some new API innovation and all, the first thing they ask that how much data you are externalizing, or how do you have enough consent from the customer to externalize this data or not, right? Now, when I get this question, I first answer that, fine, we have a consent, we can add up more consent, but customer also have to be adhere. Customer also have to be, informed that these are the consent and these are the, flip side if you share this consent, right? So this way we can send, if we can, send more nudges to our customer in a formal way or an animated way. Also at the same time, there should be more education. And I think since banks and NBFCs, right, we are having a larger responsibility because people are trusting us with their money, right? It's a very sensitive thing. So we have more responsibility on an ethical ground, on a value-added ground, right? So it's not only always about revenue and all, right? So we also have a responsibility and accountability to educate our customer that what are the probable cybersecurity threat. If any of these get breached, then what will be the consequences, right? So these all are the steps which banks are taking these days, and this will come. There will be more new innovative way will come up. Right? Thanks.
Thanks, Abhijit. So my last question of this evening, and this is one of the likings I have. I like this kind of questions. How can financial institution ensure that their employees are adequately trained and aware of latest cybersecurity threats, considering the human element as a critical factor in cybersecurity?
See, ultimately, human is one of the most critical factors at every level. But human is one of the weakest factor in the entire thing. Because even a small intrusion, suppose if somebody opened an email and he clicked on one particular link, then entire bank is gone. You put any layer in the bank, nothing will happen. So the biggest thing is that creating an awareness within the environment, creating awareness at every level, not at the highest level, even from the ground level, you have to create an awareness within the team. And being a bank, what we are doing, we are organizing a lot of training sessions, online training sessions we do. We have a phishing session. Suppose if anybody is clicking on the link, we take him to another portal altogether to attend the complete session on that. Complete training, then we give certification on that. Not only that, we give a physical training to all this stuff. What we are doing, we are not giving training at the technical level. We are giving even training at the social media level. Because if you are using certain things in the social media, how it is going to impact the entire banking situation, even that level also we are giving. We are giving training at not a highly technical level, a basic level training we are giving to our staff. And at every level, the person who is sitting in front of the desk or sitting behind the team, that every level we are giving training at things.
The reason I said this is my favorite is in my one of the organizations we had implemented a training for phishing, okay, and the next month was the yearly reviews, and we sent out an email to all of them saying, thank you for all the hard work, for the detailed feedback, please click this link. and 60% people clicked that link. So the effectiveness of the training and the assessment was not that viable for that period. So that's the reason.
So I can share, at least for the organization that I represent, I think irrespective of roles, we have tied up phishing campaigns with consequence management. And obviously it has thresholds. It's not that you click the first link and you are thrown out of the organization, but you have reasonable attempts that you can go through, and it's a 24-month cycle data. And in addition to that, we also submit, each employee gets a report card each quarter on how many overdue trainings, any instances where their systems were affected by any malicious stuff, what has been the phishing performance over the rolling 24 months. And this is pretty much taken seriously across the organization. And the good thing is that it is not tied back to a specific role, irrespective of role. So even if you are the best of the talent and you fall that bait, so it was a pleasure working with you, and we'll see once again in some path of life, right? So that's how the philosophy of the organization has been crafted, and we have seen real success around it. So from a performance trend point of view, we've started off pretty, I would say 30% adherence and all of those stuff. Now we are trending almost at 80-85%, where people not only don't fall prey of that bait, and they also report. So we've enabled a reporting schema on the Microsoft Exchange itself. So report phishing, and then it gets reported in our system. It's just one of the best practices.
Thanks team. So I have completed all my questions. So if you have any questions, you're most welcome to ask.
We have time for Q&A. Please go ahead.
This is a very, very interesting subject, cybersecurity. It's quite nice to see the anchors here, and I understand the morning police person was here. The Director General of the Police, I think. So it's quite interesting. Now you have explained also the human element. Yeah, that's a very important factor, and that's the weakest factor in all these occurrences and all these events in the cyber frauds which are happening. Now the thing which actually surprises me most is that about a decade or two back, India was very, very down below in the world fraud occurrences, and the topmost was Nigeria. Now you see during the last 2 to 3 years, India has, I think, climbed up to the position of number 4 in the cyber fraud crimes. Now, all points have been addressed very well here, but the thing is, what I am interested to know from the bankers, from the leading bankers are here, HSBC, the Mastercard, and see what sort of protection is available to the, to the banking customers who holds a credit card. The human factor is there, but always, the human being is that's the weakest link here. Suppose he commits a fault, some error he does. Now, I will give you an example where he shares an OTP by mistake. Okay. Then an SMS comes from the bank that within a minute it comes that, this, if it is not your transaction, if you have not given the OTP or, you're given it by mistake, please inform us immediately to stop the transactions. Now that person, that customer, he immediately calls, even within 1 minute of doing the transaction. But what happens, the banks, that entity, they do not take any action, and the money goes siphoned out. So what sort of protection is this? Since Mr. Sarkar is there from the Mastercard, well, this is one thing. Now, this opens up another aspect of this. I'm not addressing to anybody here. What I'm saying is about someone who is not here, not in the bankers, is that is there a probability that in such cyber crimes, there is a collusion with the bankers, bank officials. Because, why I'm saying this in India, whether this is happening or not, whether you think, what are your views? Because, in Africa, I have discovered a fraud which involved collusion with the central bank of that country. So, your views and, in such a situation, even if a human being, he does a mistake, what sort of recourse is available? Thank you.
Okay, so valid question, and it does not have a straight answer, because again, these regulations are governed by the Central Bank of India, right? First and foremost is two different scenarios. First scenario is that a transaction took place, money realized, but it was because of a systemic glitch. The second scenario is the person made a mistake, the money went through, and he called up the bank.
Sorry, the money didn't go through. This particular case, the money didn't go through. It didn't go to the merchant bank.
Okay. So I will help you explain that. So let's assume that the money didn't go through. Okay? You reported. When you call up the call center or when you call up the bank, and if you read out the guidelines from the central bank, the first step is report to your bank. The second step is report to your local cyber cell, whichever place it is. Or you can make an online complaint, right? And I'll tell you, it's my personal experience. I've seen a couple of cases where I have accompanied people. The first step that they do is, back in those days, maybe India cyber cell was not that great, but I think they picked up momentum like anything. They have a long laundry list of whether it is a phone pay or a GPay or HDFC Bank or Axis Bank. They would know the who's who to contact. They would immediately call them first, and as per protocol, they are supposed to circulate back with a mail giving details of the complaint, and they would get some information around it. Now, as you claim that the money did not go through, see, it all depends on what sort of a transaction it is. Even if it is an NEFT, while the claim is 12 hours,
it's a credit card.
It's a credit card, right? Now, it depends on where that transaction happened, who was the acquirer, who was the issuer, when did the settlement take place. Because if the settlement has taken place, because the settlement happens at the end of the day, right? Prior to that, there is an exchange of hands. If the settlement has taken place, that is when you filed up a dispute. And if it is a credit card has a very different norm. You file up a dispute. The dispute resolution takes almost 30 to 90 days. That's the timeline where a detailed investigation happens. And when you talk about credit card, because we are parties to it, so bank, let's say, and I'm randomly taking name, XYZ Bank, right? Credit card was compromised by somebody and a transaction took place. XYZ is using a payment network, let's say Mastercard, for example. Mastercard fraud analytics team will immediately get an email giving all details of the transaction. We will get into our job to see where all those note points where the transaction happened. We'll also do some sort of prior behavioral analysis. Now, in the event that the complaint that was raised is not legitimate, because we have seen situations where complaint has been raised while the person who raised the complaint has been involved in that transaction, but he was just trying to act smart around it, right?
That happens, yeah.
Right? But if it is legitimate, within 90 days, you are immediately given a temporary credit as soon as you file a complaint, with the caveat that if investigation reveals otherwise, then the credit will be taken back. So in my tenure, I have not seen any instances, especially with credit card, where it was genuine and the money has not been given back to the complaint.
Sorry to say that, but this has happened where it's a genuine mistake, and see, the agency is not here, the credit card institution which I'm talking about It's not here, but this is a thing which had happened. Many other people also had suffered the same with that particular credit card.
Maybe we
Something
can talk offline.
unfortunate, very unfortunate, but the thing which I am, hinting at, that particular agency, and maybe in days to come, there could be another factor which is responsible for that, and that should also be, when you are devising internal controls and cyber controls, this for collusion things should also be looked into.
See, internal controls have already been built in, right? Earlier in the days, credit card did not have managing your credit card, whether you use it for POS, contactless, international, domestic. Those caveats have all been built in, right? But it can be one of a situation. I don't have any background around it, but I typically talked about the process that operates in terms of prevention.
Okay, thank you.
If anyone has any further Q&A, I would request them to please have it in the networking break. So I extend my helpful thanks to all the panel members and moderator for the insightful session. As it says, with the opportunity, there is also threat. So it was a requirement for cybersecurity in the BFSI innovation. Thanks a lot, everyone, and a big round of applause for all the panelists. Now for the felicitation, I request Mr. Abhijit De, Vice President of Product Head, API Banking Axis Bank, to please come forward.